pleasure to introduce Andy from PlayHaven. If you've been here earlier, you may have heard me mention that gaming is like dating. Getting a first date is easy. Getting that second date and the third date and the fourth date, that's really hard. When PlayHaven was speaking earlier, they said that 85% of people install the app once and never actually come back and visit it again. So a sexy screenshot and some great marketing will help you get that first play, but what you do inside the game is going to help you get that second date, and that third date, and that fourth date. And Andy's going to tell us how to get a second date, and a third date, a fourth, and a fifth date, and make money out of it.
Hold on.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Yeah, so you'll see the title of my presentation is Transforming Your Games into Profitable Businesses, and it's a little misleading because I don't have a magic formula for you to print out a profitable games business. But what I'm going to talk through is a framework by which you need to understand how you monetize your users and what you need to understand about your individual users to get there, and then your customer acquisition costs. So it's mostly focused how do you maximize your gross margin for your business, not necessarily profitability. Because as you all know, nothing replaces just an amazing game. So just a little bit about the company. We call ourselves a lifetime value maximization platform. So what we really do is help you understand who your users are, how much they spend, where they're from in the world, and then manage them differently. As you'll see, we have about 4,000 games in our network. We reach about 100 million unique users, and we're proud to work with some of the biggest publishers in the space. And we're focused only on mobile, specifically. So focus of presentation. One is, of course, I'm only going to be focusing on freemium games, not paid games. The second is all the science aspects, not the art. So I'm not going to try to tell you guys how to build a great game. It's once you have a game that's ready to ship, what you really need to think through in terms of the data underneath. So more specifically, it's the lifetime value times the number of users you have minus the effective CPI, so the cost of acquisition times the number of users. So I'm just going to jump right in here. So of course, mobile games are huge. We're about to set to reach $11 billion in 2015, and it's huge, right? A lot bigger than some economies and a combination of countries. And by 2015, the whole global market for virtual goods is going to surpass $20 billion. So that's more than the entire GDP of Armenia, as an example. So what is lifetime value? So it's an acronym that's used very heavily when you're dealing with freemium businesses. And quite simply, it's just the average dollar value per new user over some period of time. So as a freemium game, you don't get that upfront 99 cents. You pay for that user, or you acquire them organically, and they're going to be worth something to you on average over, say, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And everybody uses different filters for LTV. And your LTV can vary wildly based on who the player is, and I'll get more into that specifically. But also the traffic source. So if you're acquiring incentivized users, they're going to be worth less. And non-incentivized worth more, and sometimes organic and viral users can be worth the most, but it's kind of unpredictable. And of course, the region of the world, how well the users adopt a freemium model. What platform? There's very big differences between iOS and Android, and even Amazon within the Android branch. And then also device. So generally, we see that iPad users monetize better than iPhone users, and who monetize better than iPod users. So these are all different things you need to take into consideration when you're looking at LTV. And of course, when we're looking at all users, in many freemium games, less than 1% of the users may generate more than 80% of your in-app purchase revenue, right? So that's a very small audience that's generating most of your value. But it's also really important to calculate if advertising is a part of your monetization as part of your calculation for LTV as well. So when you're looking at your players, it's really important to understand that there's various segments. So I always use the Las Vegas casino analogy when thinking about a freemium game. You have your high rollers, your whales, who come in and spend a lot of money at your casino, millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they get special treatment. They get free flight into the hotel, the casino. They get free room, free food, anything they want. They're VIPs. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you might have your nickel slot players. The stereotypical old lady just chain smoking and just cranking that dial. They might get some perks as well, but obviously not treated the same as your whales. And that's how freemium games work as well. So when you go back to thinking about that 1% of users, it's really important for you to identify who they are and start building that loyalty with them and keep them coming back, keep them happy, give them free stuff. And then for the people who come back to your game and play every single day, you need to find alternate forms of monetization and monetize that attention. So typical form is advertising. And then when you look at advertising, there's many different ad products you can use. Interstitial ads, banner ads, video ads. More interesting or kind of cutting edge stuff that's kind of tied into real world goods. There's a lot of different ways to monetize that audience. But then, there's all these different people in between as well. People who are purchase prone. You might identify there have been a few players who keep interacting with your store but never complete a purchase. So these are people who are very interested in buying something from you but never have. So you need to treat them differently as well. Typically here's all the different characteristics you need to take into consideration when looking at your user. Amount of money they've spent in your game, even the connection type, whether they're on 3G or Wi-Fi, location in the world, their language setting, total sessions. So you'll see that, it gets very complicated very fast. And just kind of get this, sorry, actually I jumped ahead on the whole casino analogy, but we typically look at our customers, users as whales, dolphins, and minnows, and they get different perks based on who they are. And then it's really important to understand your user life cycle. So not only who they are, but where they are in terms of interest level in your game. And very early on, when they're first getting introduced to your game, you really want to focus on retention and building that relationship and understanding who they are. And then when they're at the height of their kind of interest level, you want to focus on upselling them on your in-app purchase. When you've got them hooked, wait till they're hooked before you start upselling them. And then as soon as they start declining, you really want to focus on re-engagement. How do you extend that life, the width of that curve over time? And then when it looks like they're about to leave your game, you have a couple decisions to make. One is primarily you want to send them to another one of your games, because what's ultimately most important about LTV is the user level LTV across all of your games, not on an individual title basis. So if you have a portfolio of 10 games, you want to be able to send them through each one of your games until you've really maximized their revenue opportunity over time. And again, using the Las Vegas casino analogy, Caesars has many different brands of casinos, whether it's Harrah's, Caesars, Paris. So they'll find ways to kind of keep them within their family of casinos. And then when there's nothing else to do with them, then you want to monetize with ads, because if they're leaving anyways, you may as well monetize that behavior. So understanding where your users are in the curve and who they are is extremely important in terms of maximizing your LTV. And then here's kind of two different charts here. We're looking at IAP versus ad revenue. So games that monetize extremely well through in-app purchase, you'll generally see about 80% of their revenue comes from in-app purchase and 20% may come from advertising. Whereas games are weaker on the in-app purchase side, 90% of your revenue may come from ads and 10% from in-app purchase. And of course, there's everywhere in between. So again, understanding how well you monetize and which is your most important revenue source can also help you identify what you should really be focused on. Because if you're a game, there's really no hope for it to increase the in-app purchase monetization, then you need to figure out how to get people back and run more advertising against them. On the flip side, advertising is still an important component for monetization, but ultimately, in-app purchase is what you need to focus on in terms of user management. And then if you kind of take a look at revenue breakdown, of course, the 3%, a really solid freemium deal will maybe get 3% of their users to ever pay anything at all, right? Some casino games have gone as high as 10, 12%. But generally, you look at it from an in-app purchase revenue, 3% are driving all your in-app purchase revenue, and then the other 97% is an opportunity for you to drive more revenue via advertising. So now, I'm going to focus more on the customer acquisition aspect, so kind of walking away from the LTV side and looking at customer acquisition. Of course, this is kind of the environment within mobile apps, which is you see a lot of developers kind of spike to the top of whatever app store they're publishing on and come crashing right back down. We've seen that a lot over and over again. If you're really kind of data-oriented and scrappy, you're able to take multiple rides, what we call the kind of roller coaster scenario. So you launch your game, you realize your monetization isn't there or your retention isn't there, so you invest more in the build and put some more marketing behind it, you're going to go up and down. And of course, the select few out there are able to launch and sustain for a long period of time, like the Supercells of the world, Rovios. But that's largely the exception, not the rule. However, in the customer acquisition context, a lot of people are chasing that dream over there at any given time. So they'll put a lot of marketing behind one of these burst campaigns or just any way they can get to the top of the app store. But you really have to understand that works for very few people, right? So a lot of these services also kind of monetize your dream. It doesn't mean that you don't try that. Of course, you want to take a shot, but just understand what you're getting out of that. So in terms of acquisition 101, a lot of developers we work with who advertise through our system are just really focused on CPI, cost per install, when really you should be focused on margin. So if you're spending on a network that's generating a $5 LTV, there's no reason why you shouldn't spend, say, $2, $3 per user. But we do find there's a trap for some developers to focus on just the cheapest CPI possible. But generally now, in such an efficient market, the cheaper the CPI you pay, the lower the quality of the traffic. So it's really important to understand that margin. Also, again, kind of understanding the difference between burst and sustain. So burst is just trying to get as much traffic as possible and hope you hit it and users adopt your game and it just blows up. But sustain is really kind of the most reliable way for you to generate ongoing revenue, really understanding your margin. You want to be strategic about bursting, maybe with a new launch or a new upgrade to the game, but you really want to be careful about that as well. And don't blindly spend. So, you see this a lot with the kind of newly funded, VC-funded mobile gaming startup companies. They'll just start spending like crazy, right? Just try to get as much massive reach as possible. And invariably, every single time, we've seen them kind of come back and get more data-oriented again. But you can burn through a lot of money this way if you just focus on just getting as much traffic as possible without really understanding what your back end looks like. And don't rely on any one source for traffic. Really diversify your risk. Just try everything you feasibly can from a resource standpoint. So you can also keep all the different the sources honest as well, right? Just keep them in check. And as fast as possible, you always want to get the data back from your traffic sources and understand what their LTV is to really kind of understand, how you should tier your bids. So, generally, U.S., Western Europe, English-speaking countries monetize a lot better, so your bids are going to be higher there. In Asian countries like China, generally the user quality is extremely low, so you're going to want to spend less there. So understanding this as fast as possible and dynamically changing your bids is critical. And then pitfalls of acquisition. There's a lot of people out there who will sell you, and they'll tell you can get to the top of the app store. You have to be wary of that. I think many people in this room may have been burned by that in the past. Also, as much as possible, directly track every action you can, whether it's impressions, clicks, and installs through your own systems. Just keep your partners honest that way, right? Kind of verify the data yourself. Network attribution, this is another issue. A lot of people will spend across 10 different networks, and they don't realize they're buying the same user 3 or 4 times. So that's also where tracking that click is really important. So you basically attribute that install to maybe one network, maybe the last person that generated a click or the first person that generated a click. But you want to make sure you're avoiding paying for the same user 4 or 5 times. Of course, data integrity and operations is extremely important. Just monitoring making sure you have high quality data as you're measuring this. And all the ID systems out there, it's a really big mess, right? So on Apple, you have UDID, which is deprecated, IDFA, you have mobile app tracking system, you have MAC address. So understanding what's going on and trends there is really important to help you spend effectively. So really what it rolls up into is looking at all your traffic by source. And when you're looking at user lifecycle management, there's 3 major aspects. Understanding the audience and who they are, where they are in the user lifecycle, and your portfolio-wide LTV. So, is this user kind of burned out through your portfolio, or they're just getting started? And that's when you get the key output. And then here's like a formula. I know this is a lot of text here, a lot of letters, and more than happy to share this presentation and walk through it in detail with anybody. But ultimately, the importance here is not to just understand the LTV, but also the eventual organic traffic you can generate from getting to a certain rank. K-factor is largely kind of non-existent in mobile in terms of the virality. It's usually word of mouth, but I think over time, the systems and products will be built to help you measure this better. And then, of course, you deduct your customer acquisition cost. But then again, I can't stress enough, really understanding how you can cross-promote that player to your other games will then make your overall margin a lot better because you only had to acquire that customer once, right? And then, of course, again, just measure the above and step tiered bids by platform, channel, geo, and device. Just overall kind of tips and hints as you're getting into this and thinking about it is having a really solid data infrastructure and understanding every key metric is extremely important. The second one is just keep asking yourself questions, because when you're kind of looking at it from a high level and really simply, you might be looking at your paid users versus non-paid users. But as you're looking at each one, there's going to be more and more questions. Where did they come from? What device are they on? Who they are? So keep asking your questions. But at the same time, it's really easy to get in a rabbit hole. You can infinitely ask yourselves these questions, and at some point, there's diminishing returns. Look at where you can get the most effect from the minimal amount of work, and just keep optimizing that way. At some point, if you're really truly optimized, then you can go to that next level and get into the really small details. And overall, take calculated risks, but make sure you learn from every failure. So if you try one of these campaigns that tries to get you in the top 5 in the App Store and you come crashing right down, at least have a spreadsheet that kind of shows you the organic installs that you generate from hitting a certain rank. A lot of people do that, right? So they try to build a model over time on an Excel spreadsheet of, if I pay to get to number 1, how many free installs I'm going to get to number 5, number 10, et cetera, et cetera. The fourth is, there are a lot of great services out there, but there are also others that are here to just monetize your dreams. So just keep your partners honest and watch them closely. And overall, people focus sometimes too much on the customer acquisition aspect and not enough on LTV. And ultimately, if you have strong LTV, that gives you all the buying power on the customer acquisition side. So it's really important to kind of focus on this and make sure you monetize well in order to give you more leverage on the acquisition side. And just kind of like, ways of working. Be very creative and scrappy. It's a dogfight. There are a lot of developers out there with really sophisticated tools and processes to manage all this. So you have to be very creative and scrappy as you're working through the marketplace. And be agile. Apple or Google or Microsoft will at any point kind of change the whole nature of the game on you in terms of customer acquisition or how you can monetize. So you have to be able to adapt very quickly. And overall, is be patient. Just keep going at it, keep experimenting, keep testing and learning. So that's it. Just PlayHaven. I'm not going to go into what we do really. I'm going to leave time for questions. And that's it.
So do we have any questions for Andy? Okay, well, maybe I will start off with a couple. I wrote some down. Thank you very much for sharing the information. You showed the curve of the user lifecycle, and I know there's a huge range of, based on sort of genres, but can you sort of explain your experience of how long it takes to go from one stage to another? Is it measured in days, weeks, months? What's the range, the spectrum of how long it takes for users to move down that lifecycle path?
A lot of developers look at it from a 1 day, 3 day, 7 day, and 1 month cycle. But we've done a lot of kind of overall clustering and regression analysis on a lot of our customers' user bases, and generally you'll see some really interesting trends. So you'll see a lot of times maybe 60 to 70% of new users will just try the game once and never come back again, right? So that's either they just saw it on the App Store, tried it, it might be an incentivized install, whatever it is. They fired up the game once and that's it. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you'll see a much smaller percentage that play the game and just maintain over a long period of time, like the same level of engagement. And then there's some other curves that are really interesting. Like there's one curve that's people who are really engaged in the first 2 days. They play more than anybody, maybe 20 times a day. And on the 3rd day or 4th day, they start really kind of hitting a wall, declining. So a lot of times, it's important to kind of see these curves and kind of ask the question why. Because it could be the paywall is too aggressive. So they were really into the game, really addicted, but you upsold a little too early, so then you lost that user. But doing that kind of retroactive analysis, understanding where they are is really important. And then once you kind of understand and can predict which curve they're on, then you can set things into motion to kind of try to snap them into that ideal curve, which is ongoing daily engagement. But it's a challenge. It's a lot of data and a lot of things to consider.
Okay. Yeah, we have a question over here.
A few friends of mine are developers, and they're publishing games at the minute, and they've actually had some pretty nice success with eCPMs on PlayHaven. So I'm just wondering, would you be able to share with us kind of any best ad types that you'd recommend for maximizing eCPMs, and also maybe different locations that you think would work well in games?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's also based on the ad product. So video ads are quite effective. We don't serve any video ads, but those are largely kind of incentivized video ads. So earn virtual currency by watching this video ad. It's a very effective way to monetize. But the fill isn't always going to be there. And then you have traditional banner ads where you can pretty much put them anywhere you want. But eCPMs are generally going to be lower, but at least it's kind of an ongoing revenue stream. And then what PlayHaven does is we serve interstitial ads, so kind of moments within the game where you may want to serve an ad or any other kind of message. So we also have tools that help you focus on upselling on in-app purchase with discounts, or capturing their email address, or in other ways building a relationship. But really kind of depends on the game. Like casino games are one thing where you're constantly just like hitting a slot machine button. We generally found with our customers, because we work with the Playtikas like Slotomania of the world and Bit Rhymes with Bingo Bash, is more of a time-based thing. So maybe every 3 to 5 minutes, surface an ad or something like that. But that's also where the targeting comes into place too, because you may not want to show any ads to your paying users. The people who are paying you money anyways, don't distract them and risk losing them. So target your non-paying users, and you can get a little more aggressive with that. So there's session-based games where it's like a puzzle game, and you go through it once, and maybe after 3 failures you do something to show them an ad. But that's also where some of our other tools get interesting, because we have something that allows you to upsell on an in-app purchase. So what some of our customers do, such as Glue, is you'll try to kill a boss 3 times in a row and you'll fail. That's a perfect time to upsell them with a weapon to go kill the boss. So for a limited time right now, buy this for 50% off. Because really on the upsell, you want to catch them in terms of when they're most frustrated or when they're most excited, right? It's kind of measuring like their emotional peaks. And for advertising, you kind of want to measure when they're kind of losing interest in the game, right? That's kind of when they're most likely to convert, and they're going to leave anyways. So it really kind of depends on the flow of the game. And we have teams of people who kind of look at that and can suggest things, but it's really going to be different by the genre.
have a question in the corner. Just speak. There you
go. Which I like a whiteboard
if you
or
repeat the question as well.
Oh yeah, so how do you make sure that you don't pay for the same user multiple times? So basically you need to have some sort of tracking API. So anytime an ad network generates a click, you make sure they also send you that click. So if you get the same click from 10 different networks with the same ID, generally what we've seen is people attribute that install to the last click generated. So let's just say you're spending on AdMob, PlayHaven, Tapjoy, whatever it is. They're all sending you the clicks with a source. So what is the source of the click? And then you, within your system, say, I will give credit to the install on the last click. So that's how you do it. But you have to build some infrastructure for that and track it closely.
And I've been putting people on the spot since we have a lot of developers in the audience. If there's one thing, that low-hanging fruit, the fact you should be doing this, what's that one piece of advice you can say to all the developers? Go home now and do this. What would it be?
Good question. In which aspect? Customer acquisition, the game itself?
You choose. You're on the stage. Just one piece of great advice for our developers here.
Man, that's a tough one. So many. Make a good game. No, I think the best piece of advice is truly understanding which business model you're going after, not just based on the opportunity itself, but what you can realistically achieve. Because one of the biggest mistakes I see is developers that want to move into freemium is it's not as simple as building like a 99-cent game where you launch it once and you kind of just watch it fly or not. Like really truly succeeding in freemium, you really have to have like a team and an infrastructure in place and understand all the hard work happens after you launch the game, not before, in terms of measuring the data and optimizing. So I think that's the number one thing to consider is, yes, freemium is a huge opportunity. It's crazy out there, but it's also highly competitive, and you're dealing with a lot of people who are very sophisticated. So truly understanding that is important. So I would say that's the one thing.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Andy.
Nope,
Great.
Thank you.